I stared at the Facebook message on my phone screen, my hands trembling as I read it for the fourth time. The name Sarah Williams made my stomach drop. My biological mother. After 12 years of complete silence, she had found me. Her message was casual, almost cheerful, explaining how they had given me up for adoption because they desperately wanted a girl and couldn't afford 2 children. Now they needed $10,000 for my sister Emma's college tuition at Stanford. I sat in my cramped studio apartment in Portland, Oregon, remembering that horrible day when I was 7 years old and social services came to take me away. My adoptive parents, the Hendersons, had always told me that my birth family simply couldn't provide for me financially. But this message revealed a truth that cut deeper than any lie ever could have. The message hit me like a freight train carrying 20 years of buried pain. Sarah Williams wrote with the casual tone of someone asking a neighbor to water their plants, not someone reaching out to the child they had abandoned. But the worst part came in the third paragraph where she mentioned that they had kept trying for a girl after giving me up, and Emma had been born just 2 years later. I closed my eyes and let the memories flood back. The Williams family lived in a double-wide trailer on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. Sarah Williams always seemed distant when I tried to show her my drawings or when I played with the toy trucks I had found at garage sales. She would sigh and turn away, muttering things under her breath that I was too young to understand. My birth father, Robert Williams, worked double shifts at the Ford automotive plant, coming home exhausted and covered in grease, never having energy for catch or bedtime stories. Even at 7 years old, I remember overhearing hushed conversations between them after they thought I was asleep. Phrases like, "trying again," and "maybe next time," echoed through the thin trailer walls. I had pressed my ear against the cold aluminum, trying to understand what I had done wrong, why they seemed so disappointed whenever they looked at me. The Facebook message painted a picture that made my chest ache. Emma Williams, now 18, was valedictorian of her high school class. She had been accepted to Stanford University with a partial scholarship. Sarah described her as brilliant, ambitious, planning to become a pediatric surgeon. The pride in every word was unmistakable, the kind of parental joy I had never experienced from the Williams family. Sarah wrote that they had spent everything on Emma's preparation. Private tutors for advanced mathematics and science, SAT preparation courses that cost hundreds of dollars, piano lessons, dance classes, debate team fees. She mentioned how Emma had always been their miracle, and everything they had dreamed of having in a child. The casual way she wrote it suggested she had forgotten, or simply didn't care that she was writing to the child they had discarded. The most painful detail came near the end of the message. Sarah mentioned that they had told Emma she was an only child. My sister, the one who had taken my place in their hearts, had no idea I even existed. I looked around my studio apartment with fresh eyes. The second-hand couch I had bought from a thrift store. The folding table that served as both dining room and office. The small television perched on a plastic crate. This was the life of the unwanted son while somewhere in Ohio, Emma Williams was probably choosing between designer dresses for her graduation ceremony. My adoptive parents, David and Patricia Henderson, had been everything the Williams family wasn't. David taught high school mathematics and had infinite patience for helping me with homework. Patricia worked as a registered nurse at the local hospital, and she had held me through countless nightmares during those first years after the adoption. They had never been able to have biological children, and they poured all their love into helping me heal. The Hendersons had supported my interest in graphic design even when money was tight. They helped me get through community college, celebrating every small victory, like it was a major achievement. When I graduated with my associate degree, Patricia cried tears of joy, while David took pictures from every possible angle. Now I worked at a small marketing agency in Portland, designing logos and brochures for local businesses. My annual salary of $35,000 felt adequate for my simple life, but it was nothing compared to what the Williams family apparently needed for Emma's education. I picked up my phone and read Sarah's message again. She had included several photos of Emma. The resemblance was undeniable. We had the same dark hair, the same green eyes, the same stubborn chin that I remembered seeing on Robert Williams. But where my childhood photos showed a confused, sad little boy, Emma's pictures radiated confidence and joy. She was surrounded by friends at what looked like a school dance. Another photo showed her receiving some kind of academic award with Sarah and Robert beaming in the background. That night, I called Patricia Henderson. Her familiar voice brought immediate comfort the way it always had when the world felt too overwhelming. "Leo, sweetheart, you sound upset. What's wrong?" I told her about the message about discovering I had a sister, about the casual way Sarah Williams had explained why they had given me up. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, and I could hear her taking deep breaths the way she did when she was trying to control her emotions. "There's something I never told you," she finally said. "Something David and I thought would only hurt you more." My heart started racing. "What do you mean?" "After the adoption was finalized, the Williams family asked if they could visit you. They called a few times during that first year, asking how you were doing, if you were adjusting well. But then the calls just stopped. We saved all the birthday cards they sent, thinking we'd give them to you when you were older and ready to understand. But after the second year, nothing. No cards, no calls, no contact at all. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. They had moved on, completely erasing me from their lives so they could focus on getting the daughter they actually wanted. While I had spent years in therapy, learning to trust again, learning that I was worthy of love, they had been planning their perfect family. "I should have told you years ago," Patricia continued. "But you were doing so well building a life and I didn't want to open old wounds." After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, staring out at the Portland skyline. Somewhere out there, other adoptees were probably living their lives grateful for the families who had chosen them. But I felt like I was drowning in the realization that I hadn't just been given up for adoption. I had been replaced. Sleep was impossible that night. I found myself doing something I had promised myself I would never do, stalking my biological family's social media profiles. Sarah Williams's Facebook page was a shrine to Emma's accomplishments, and every post felt like another knife twisting in my chest. Photo after photo showed Emma at dance recitals, science fairs, graduation ceremonies. The captions were what destroyed me. "Our precious only daughter at her senior prom." The child we always prayed for heading to Stanford. Our one and only blessing receiving another academic award. One and only. The words appeared over and over again, as if Sarah Williams was trying to convince the world that Emma was their first and only child. I scrolled back through years of posts looking for any mention of me, any acknowledgement that they had once had a son. There was nothing. I had been completely erased from their family narrative. Robert Williams's LinkedIn profile was even worse. His bio proudly stated, "Father to an amazing daughter heading to Stanford University." Under his recent activity, he had shared articles about supporting your only child's dreams and the joy of raising a daughter. Every professional connection, every coworker, every friend believed that Emma Williams was their one and only child. I used my graphic design skills to dig deeper, cross-referencing their social media with public records and local newspaper archives. What I found painted a picture of a family that had completely reinvented themselves after giving me up. The Williams family had moved from the rundown trailer park where I remembered living to a beautiful suburban neighborhood in Columbus. Their current house was a two-story colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and a white picket fence. The property records showed they had purchased it for $210,000, just 5 years after Emma was born. Robert had been promoted to plant supervisor at Ford, and his income had increased dramatically. Sarah now worked as a dental hygienist at an upscale practice in the suburbs. Their driveway held a newer Honda Pilot with multiple bumper stickers. Stanford parent. My daughter is an honor student. And dance mom. I found local newspaper clippings featuring Emma Williams as a standout student. Local teen wins state science fair. Columbus student receives full academic scholarship. High school valedictorian plans career in medicine. In every photo, Sarah and Robert stood behind their daughter with expressions of pure pride and joy. But the detail that broke me was in one of the newspaper interviews. When asked about family support for Emma's achievements, Sarah had said, "We've been able to focus completely on our daughter's education because we always knew she was meant for great things. Having just one child has allowed us to give her everything she needs to succeed. Just one child." The lie was so complete, so thoroughly integrated into their new identity, that they probably believed it themselves by now. I wondered if they had ever felt even a moment of guilt about erasing me from their lives, or if I had become nothing more than a mistake they had successfully corrected. I found Emma's Instagram account, which was public and filled with typical teenage content. Photos with friends, inspirational quotes about achieving dreams, pictures from family vacations I had never been invited to join. The family had traveled to Yellowstone National Park, Disney World, and the Grand Canyon. Emma's captions often mentioned how grateful she was for parents who supported her dreams unconditionally. One post from 6 months ago showed the family at a Stanford University campus tour. Emma was wearing a Stanford sweatshirt, grinning between Sarah and Robert in front of the iconic university gates. The caption read, "Mom and Dad have been dreaming of this day since I was born. So grateful to be their one and only focus." I closed my laptop and walked to the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. The same green eyes that smiled back at me from Emma's photos. The same dark hair, the same facial structure. But where Emma's photos showed someone who had been loved and supported unconditionally, I saw someone who had spent his entire adult life trying to prove he was worthy of love. The truth was becoming crystal clear. The Williams family hadn't just given me up for adoption because of financial hardship. They had given me up because I wasn't the daughter they wanted, and they had never stopped trying to get the family they actually desired. When Emma finally arrived, they had everything they had ever wanted, and I became an inconvenient piece of their past that needed to be forgotten. I thought about calling Patricia Henderson again, but I didn't want to burden her with more pain. Instead, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and tried to process what I had learned. The people who had given me life had spent the past 18 years pretending I had never existed. Meanwhile, I had spent those same years in therapy, working through abandonment issues, building relationships, trying to understand why I sometimes felt like I was never quite enough for anyone. Now I understood. I was never enough for the Williams family because I was never what they wanted in the first place. Emma Williams had been living the life that might have been mine if only I had been born a girl. She had received the love support and opportunities that every child deserves, while I had been cast aside like a broken toy. But the most painful realization was yet to come. Tomorrow, I would need to decide how to respond to Sarah Williams's message. Did I owe anything to the people who had erased me so completely from their lives? Did I have any obligation to help fund the education of the sister who had replaced me? I spent 2 days crafting a response to Sarah Williams's message, deleting and rewriting it dozens of times. Finally, I settled on something simple and direct. I received your message. I'd like to understand the situation better before making any decision. Can we talk? My phone rang within 10 minutes. Leo. Oh my goodness, I can't believe you actually responded. I was so nervous about reaching out after all these years. Sarah's voice sounded exactly as I remembered from my childhood, but now there was a desperate edge to it that made my skin crawl. Hello, Sarah. I kept my voice neutral, professional. Please call me Mom. I know it's been a long time, but you're still my son. The word Mom felt like poison in my ears. I think Sarah is more appropriate. Can you explain the situation with Emma's college expenses? Sarah launched into a detailed explanation that revealed just how deep their financial problems went. Stanford University's total annual cost was $50,000. Emma's partial academic scholarship covered $30,000, leaving them responsible for $20,000 per year. Over 4 years, that meant they needed to come up with $80,000. We've already taken out a second mortgage on the house. Sarah explained, her voice breaking slightly. Robert picked up a weekend job at Home Depot, working Saturdays and Sundays on top of his regular plant schedule. We've depleted our entire retirement savings account. I did quick math in my head. If Robert was making decent money as a plant supervisor and Sarah was working as a dental hygienist, their combined income should have been enough to handle $20,000 per year in college expenses, especially with careful planning. What about student loans, I asked. We don't qualify for need-based aid because of our income level, but we also don't make enough to comfortably afford the full cost. We're stuck in that middle ground where we make too much for help, but not enough to pay without serious sacrifice. Sarah's explanation continued, revealing details that made me increasingly uncomfortable. Emma had no idea about their financial strain. They had maintained the illusion that money was never a concern, that her dreams were completely attainable. Emma was planning to study pre-medicine with the goal of becoming a pediatric surgeon, a path that would require medical school after her undergraduate degree. She's worked so hard for this, Leo. Emma has maintained a 4.0 grade point average throughout high school. She's volunteered at children's hospitals, participated in medical research programs, taken every advanced placement class available. She deserves this opportunity. The manipulative undertone in Sarah's voice became more apparent as she continued. You turned out fine with the Henderson family. They're good people who were able to give you a stable life without the financial pressure. We made that sacrifice so you could have better opportunities. Now, this is your chance to help family when we really need it. I felt my anger building, but I kept my voice calm. How much are you asking for? The first payment is due in 6 weeks. We need $12,500 to secure Emma's spot in the fall semester. If we can't make that payment, she'll lose her place at Stanford. $12,500. more than a third of my annual salary. And you want me to provide this money? We've exhausted every other option, Leo. We've applied for private loans, but the interest rates are astronomical. We've looked into payment plans, but even those require a substantial upfront payment. Your family. Emma is your sister. Surely you can understand that family helps family in situations like this. The conversation took an even more manipulative turn as Sarah continued. I know the Hendersons paid for your community college, so you don't have student debt hanging over your head like most young people. You have a steady job, a simple lifestyle. $10,000 might seem like a lot, but it would mean everything to Emma's future. I wanted to scream. Sarah Williams was asking me to sacrifice a significant portion of my income for the sister who had been given everything I had been denied, while simultaneously implying that I owed them this favor because they had made the sacrifice of giving me away. Sarah, I need some time to think about this. Of course. But Leo, please remember that the deadline is approaching quickly. Every day we wait makes it harder to secure Emma's place in the program. She's been dreaming of this since she was a little girl. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. The woman who had given me up for adoption because she wanted a daughter was now asking me to fund that daughter's education. The sister, who had no idea I existed, was about to benefit from my hard-earned money while I struggled to afford basic necessities in my studio apartment. I started researching Stanford University's financial aid policies and payment options. What I discovered made Sarah's story even more suspicious. Stanford had extensive need-based financial aid programs and flexible payment plans for families in exactly their situation. They offered work-study programs, additional scholarship opportunities, and emergency financial assistance. More importantly, I learned that Stanford routinely worked with families to prevent students from losing their spots due to temporary financial difficulties. A 2-week extension on the payment deadline was standard practice, and the university had counselors specifically trained to help families navigate financial challenges. Either Sarah Williams was lying about their options, or she was too proud to admit to Stanford's financial aid office that they needed help. But asking their abandoned son for money was somehow less humiliating than admitting they couldn't afford their daughter's dream school. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to process the emotional whiplash of the day. 12 years of silence followed by a desperate request for money. No apology for abandoning me. No acknowledgement of the pain they had caused. No interest in building an actual relationship. Just a calculated appeal for financial support dressed up as family obligation. The little boy inside me, the one who had spent years wondering why his parents didn't want him, was screaming for their approval. Maybe this was my chance to prove I was worthy of their love. Maybe helping Emma would finally earn me a place in the Williams family. But the adult I had become shaped by the Henderson family's unconditional love and support, recognized the manipulation for what it was. Sarah and Robert Williams had contacted me for one reason only: they needed money, and they thought I might be desperate enough for family connection to provide it. The question that kept me awake was whether I was strong enough to disappoint them again the way I had apparently disappointed them simply by being born male. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with Sarah's story. The desperation in her voice seemed genuine, but the details didn't add up. A plant supervisor and dental hygienist in Ohio should have been able to handle $20,000 per year in college expenses, especially with careful planning and the financial aid options I had researched. I made a decision that would change everything. Using $1,500 from my emergency savings account, I hired Marcus Thompson, a private investigator recommended by Jake Martinez, a co-worker at the marketing agency. Marcus specialized in background checks and financial investigations for divorce cases and business disputes. I need to know if a family is really struggling financially or if they're lying to manipulate money from someone. I told Marcus during our meeting at a coffee shop in downtown Portland. Marcus was a former police detective in his 50s, with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too much human dishonesty. He listened to my story without judgment, taking notes in a small leather notebook. Family situations are always complicated, but financial deception is pretty straightforward to uncover, he said. Give me a week, and I'll tell you exactly what the Williams family's real situation looks like. 7 days later, Marcus called me with results that made my blood boil. Leo, you're going to want to sit down for this. I was already sitting in my cubicle at work, but I gripped my desk chair anyway. The Williams family isn't facing bankruptcy, not even close. Robert Williams received a promotion to senior plant supervisor 8 months ago, bringing his annual salary to $75,000. Sarah Williams works at Columbus Dental Associates, one of the most expensive practices in the city. Her annual income is approximately $42,000. My hands started shaking. Are you sure? I'm sure. Their combined household income is around $117,000. They own their home outright with only $80,000 remaining on a mortgage for a house currently valued at $250,000. They're not wealthy, but they're solidly upper middle class. Marcus continued reading from his report, and each detail felt like another betrayal. Property records show they completed a major home renovation last year, including a new kitchen and a swimming pool installation. The pool alone cost $28,000. They lease a brand new Lexus RX 350, which runs about $600 per month. I felt sick. What about their spending patterns? Credit card records are harder to access legally, but I was able to get information from a contact in the industry. The Williams family has been taking expensive vacations for the past 2 years. Hawaii in 2022, a European tour last summer including England, France, and Italy. Hotel and restaurant charges suggest they're not exactly pinching pennies. Marcus saved the most damaging information for last. Here's the thing that really bothers me, Leo. I found evidence that Sarah Williams has been researching how to contact you for over 6 months. She joined 3 different Facebook groups for birth parents, specifically groups focused on reconnecting with adult adoptees. She consulted with a family therapist in Columbus about reconnecting with a placed child for financial assistance. The room started spinning. She planned this whole thing. Gets worse. I have a contact who works in the therapy field, someone who occasionally helps with my investigations. Confidentiality rules are strict, but she was able to confirm that Sarah Williams had multiple sessions focused specifically on how to approach you for money. The therapist apparently advised against it, suggesting that using an adoptee for financial gain could cause significant psychological harm. I couldn't breathe. Everything Sarah had told me was a carefully orchestrated lie. The desperation, the sacrifices, the financial strain, all of it was manipulation designed to extract money from the son they had thrown away years ago. There's one more thing, Marcus said. Emma Williams has been accepted to several universities with full scholarship packages. Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland offered her a full ride for their pre-medicine program. Ohio State offered full tuition plus a living allowance. The girl has options that wouldn't cost her parents a single penny. Then, why Stanford? A prestige, probably. Stanford sounds better at dinner parties than Case Western. But here's what really matters. The Williams family chose the most expensive option, knowing they'd need outside help to afford it. They've been planning to use you as their backup funding source. After I hung up, I sat in my cubicle staring at my computer screen, unable to focus on the logo design project that was due that afternoon. My co-workers probably thought I was having some kind of medical emergency, because Jake Martinez came over to ask if I needed to go home. I'm fine, I lied, just dealing with some family stuff. Family stuff. The irony was overwhelming. The Williams family had spent months planning how to manipulate me, while I had been genuinely considering whether I owed them something because of our biological connection. That evening, I read Sarah's original Facebook message again, but now I could see the calculation behind every word. The timing, the emotional appeal, the specific amount requested. All of it had been carefully planned to maximize the chances that I would say yes. I thought about Emma, the sister I had never met. Did she know about any of this? Was she aware that her parents were planning to fund her dream education by manipulating their abandoned son? Or was she another victim of her parents' deception, believing that her family was struggling financially when they were actually living quite comfortably? Marcus's investigation had revealed that the Williams family's true colors were even worse than I had imagined. They weren't just people who had made a difficult choice 18 years ago. They were manipulative, selfish individuals who were willing to emotionally abuse their abandoned child for financial gain. But I had one advantage they didn't know about. I knew the truth. The question now was what to do with that knowledge. I could simply ignore their requests and block their contact, letting them find another way to fund Emma's Stanford education. Or I could confront them with the evidence and force them to face the consequences of their deception. As I sat in my apartment that night looking at the photos Marcus had included in his report, photos of the Williams family's beautiful home, their expensive car, their vacation pictures from Europe, I realized that I finally had the power in this relationship. For the first time in my life, I held information that could destroy the careful narrative Sarah and Robert Williams had built about their perfect family. The question was whether I was strong enough to use it. Armed with Marcus's evidence, I made a decision that terrified and empowered me in equal measure. I was going to confront the Williams family face to face. But first, I needed to see my sister. I took 3 vacation days from work and drove the 6 hours from Portland to Columbus, Ohio. The familiar landscape of my childhood brought back memories I had tried to forget. The poverty, the instability, the constant feeling that I was somehow inadequate. But now I was returning as an adult with the truth about who these people really were. I spent my first day in Columbus conducting surveillance that felt surreal. Using the information from Marcus's report, I found Emma's high school and waited outside during the lunch period. When I finally saw her, the resemblance was so striking that several students probably would have noticed if they had been paying attention. Emma Williams was beautiful in the confident way that comes from being loved unconditionally. She moved through groups of friends with easy grace, laughing at jokes, organizing what looked like study groups. She wore designer jeans and a Stanford University sweatshirt. Her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that swayed as she walked. For a moment, I felt a stab of pure envy. This was the life I should have had. The confidence that comes from knowing your parents believe in you, the security of never doubting whether you're worthy of love, the freedom to dream big dreams because your family supports them unconditionally. But watching Emma also filled me with protective anger. She had no idea that her parents were planning to manipulate their abandoned son to fund her education. She was an innocent victim of their deception, just as I had been. That evening, I called Sarah Williams. Leo. I was just thinking about you. Have you had a chance to consider our conversation? Actually, I'm in Columbus right now. I'd like to meet with you and Robert in person to discuss Emma's college situation. Sarah's excitement was palpable. Oh, wonderful. That's so thoughtful of you to come all this way. Would you like to come to the house for dinner? Emma is working tonight, so it would just be the three of us. We could have a real family conversation. A real family conversation. The phrase made me nauseous, but I agreed to meet them at a restaurant instead. I wanted neutral ground for what was about to happen. I arrived at the upscale Italian restaurant 30 minutes early and chose a corner booth where I could see the entrance. I set my phone to record the conversation, making sure it was positioned to capture clear audio. What I was about to do might be legally questionable, but I needed evidence of their lies. Sarah and Robert Williams walked in together, and seeing them in person after 12 years was like being punched in the stomach. They looked older, more prosperous, but essentially unchanged. Robert had gained weight, and his hair was mostly gray, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had climbed the economic ladder. Sarah had clearly spent money on her appearance. Professional hairstyling, expensive clothing, cosmetic dentistry that gave her a perfect smile. They spotted me immediately and hurried over, both talking at once. Leo, look at you, you've grown into such a handsome man. We're so proud of how well you've done for yourself. The false enthusiasm made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to smile and shake their hands. We ordered drinks and appetizers, and for the first 20 minutes they kept the conversation light and superficial. They showed me photos of Emma on Sarah's phone, talking proudly about her achievements and her bright future. She's planning to study pre-medicine at Stanford, then, hopefully, medical school. Robert said, his chest puffed with pride. She wants to be a pediatric surgeon, help sick children. We couldn't be more proud. It sounds like you've invested a lot in her education, I said carefully. Everything we have, Sarah replied. We've sacrificed so much to give her opportunities. Sometimes I feel guilty about how much we've spent on her preparation, but she's worth every penny. I let them talk about their sacrifices for a while, building a detailed record of their lies. When they finally steered the conversation toward my potential financial contribution, I was ready. Before we discuss the money situation, I'm curious about something. How exactly are you struggling financially, Robert? What's your current position at Ford? Robert glanced at Sarah nervously. I'm a supervisor now. Been promoted a few times over the years. And what does that pay roughly? Well, that's kind of personal. I'm being asked to contribute a significant amount of money to your family. I think it's reasonable to understand your actual financial situation. Sarah jumped in. We make decent money, but Stanford is just so expensive. Even with Emma's scholarship, we're looking at $20,000 per year. That's interesting, I said, pulling out my phone, because I did some research on Stanford's financial aid policies. For a family with your approximate income level, there are extensive need-based aid programs available. I watched their faces change as I began reading from Stanford's website. Emergency Financial Assistance Work-Study Programs. Additional scholarship opportunities for high-achieving students. It seems like there are many options you haven't explored. Robert's jaw tightened. Those programs are very competitive. We can't count on getting additional help. But you can count on getting help from me. The question hung in the air for a moment, before Sarah leaned forward with her most persuasive smile. Leo, Your family. Emma is your sister. We know we made difficult choices when you were younger, but we've always hoped you understood that we did what we thought was best for everyone. Interesting way to put it, I said. Can you tell me more about those difficult choices? Sarah and Robert exchanged glances, and I could see them silently debating how much truth to reveal. We were young and struggling financially, Sarah began. We barely had enough to take care of ourselves, let alone a child. When Emma came along, we were in a better position to provide. So, it wasn't because you wanted a daughter specifically. Another pause. Robert answered this time. We always thought we'd be better parents to a girl. It wasn't personal, Leo. We just knew we could give Emma everything she needed to succeed. The admission hit me like a slap, but I kept my expression neutral. And Emma doesn't know about me. We saw no reason to complicate her life with information about our past mistakes, Sarah said. She's focused on her future, which is what matters. Your past mistakes, I repeated. Is that what I am? The conversation was spiraling into territory they clearly didn't want to explore. Robert tried to redirect. Look, what happened 20 years ago doesn't matter now. What matters is that we're family, and Emma needs help to achieve her dreams. You're in a position to provide that help. Actually, let me be more specific about my position. I said, deciding it was time to drop the bomb. I'm in a position where I make $35,000 per year at a marketing agency in Portland. I live in a studio apartment and drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic. The $12,500 you're asking for represents more than a third of my annual salary. I leaned forward and lowered my voice. Meanwhile, my research indicates that your combined household income is around $117,000. You own a house worth $250,000 with minimal mortgage debt. You've spent the last 2 years taking expensive vacations to Hawaii and Europe. You installed a swimming pool last year that cost $28,000. The color drained from both their faces. Sarah started to speak, but I wasn't finished. Most interesting of all, I discovered that Emma has been offered full scholarship packages to several universities, including Case Western Reserve and Ohio State. Universities that would cost you absolutely nothing, but apparently aren't prestigious enough for your standards. Robert's face turned red with anger. Who do you think you are investigating our private business? I'm the son you abandoned investigating whether the people asking for money are telling the truth. Turns out you're not. Sarah tried a different approach, her voice becoming pleading and desperate. Leo, even if we're more stable financially than we initially indicated, Emma deserves the best education possible. Stanford will open doors that other universities can't. Surely you want your sister to have every opportunity for success. My sister, I said slowly, who has no idea I exist. My sister who has been told she's an only child her entire life. My sister who thinks her parents are struggling financially to afford her education when you're actually living quite comfortably. The lies were unraveling faster than they could contain them. Sarah started crying, but even her tears seemed calculated. We made mistakes, Leo. We were young and scared, and we didn't know how to handle the situation. But Emma is innocent in all of this. She doesn't deserve to have her dreams crushed because of our past choices. You're absolutely right, I said, standing up from the table. Emma doesn't deserve to have her dreams crushed, but she also doesn't deserve to be lied to about her family's financial situation. And she definitely doesn't deserve to have parents who would manipulate their abandoned son for money, rather than admit they need to consider less expensive educational options. I left money on the table for my portion of the bill and walked toward the door. Sarah called after me, her voice breaking. "Leo, please, don't let our mistakes hurt Emma's future." I turned around one last time. Emma's future will be fine. She's brilliant, accomplished, and has multiple excellent educational options. What she needs are parents who tell her the truth and support her realistic choices, not parents who live lies and expect other people to fund their fantasies. As I walked out of the restaurant, I felt something I had never experienced before in relation to the Williams family: complete and total emotional freedom. For the first time in my life, I had held the power in our relationship, and I had used it to expose their deception and manipulation. But I wasn't finished yet. Emma Williams deserved to know the truth about her family, and she deserved to know she had a brother who actually cared about her well-being. Instead of returning to my hotel after the restaurant confrontation, I drove to the bookstore where Marcus's investigation had revealed Emma worked part-time. It was a small independent shop near Ohio State's campus, the kind of place that stayed open late to serve the college students and book lovers. I waited in the coffee section pretending to read a magazine while watching Emma work behind the counter. She was friendly with customers, recommending books, helping people find obscure titles. Her confidence was evident in every interaction, and I could see why her parents were so proud of her achievements. At 9:30, Emma began closing procedures. I approached the counter with a book about graphic design, my hands shaking slightly. "Did you find everything you were looking for?" she asked with a genuine smile. "Actually, I was hoping to talk with you about something personal. My name is Leo Henderson, and I believe we might be related." Emma's smile faded as confusion crossed her face. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. This is going to sound incredible, but I think I'm your brother. Your biological brother. My birth name was Leo Williams, and I was adopted when I was 7 years old." Emma stared at me for a long moment, and I watched recognition dawn in her eyes as she noticed our physical similarities. She looked around the empty bookstore, then flipped the door sign to closed. "I think we need to sit down," she said quietly. We sat in the small seating area near the poetry section, and I explained everything as gently as possible. I told her about the adoption, about Sarah's recent contact about the request for money. I showed her photos from my childhood and the adoption paperwork I had brought with me. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through shock, confusion, and growing anger. "My parents told me I was an only child," she finally said. "They've never mentioned having another child, not even once. I know. That's been the hardest part of learning about you. You've had no idea I existed. Why are you here now? Why are you telling me this?" I took a deep breath and explained about Sarah's request for money, about my investigation into their financial situation, about the lies they had told both of us. "They're asking you for money for my Stanford tuition." Emma's voice was rising with incredulity. $12,500 for the first semester payment. Emma stood up and started pacing around the seating area. "This is insane. My parents aren't struggling financially. We just got back from a vacation in Italy. They redid the kitchen last year and put in a swimming pool. I've been feeling guilty about the cost of Stanford, but they keep telling me money isn't a problem. They've been lying to both of us," I said. "But Emma, there's something else you should know. You've been accepted to several universities with full scholarship packages. You don't have to go to Stanford." "I know about the other scholarships," she said. "I actually preferred the Case Western's pre-med program, but my parents insisted Stanford was the better choice. They said prestige matters for medical school admissions." Case Western has an excellent reputation for pre-medicine. It might actually serve your goals better than Stanford. Emma sat back down, her head in her hands. I can't believe this. They gave up their son because they wanted a daughter. Then they lied to me about having a brother. And now they're trying to manipulate you into paying for my education. That about sums it up. I feel sick, she said. All my life I've been grateful for how supportive my parents are, how they've invested in my education. But it's all been built on lies. We talked for another hour, and I learned that Emma had been questioning certain things about her family for years. She had never seen baby photos of herself before age 2. Her parents had no extended family and had always been vague about their backgrounds. When she had asked about grandparents or cousins, they had deflected with stories about being estranged from their families. I always felt like there were missing pieces, Emma said. Now I understand why. As we prepared to leave the bookstore, Emma made a decision that surprised me. I want to confront them together. They need to face what they've done to both of us. Are you sure this could get very ugly? I'm sure. They've been lying to me my entire life, and they've been trying to manipulate you. Someone needs to hold them accountable. We made plans to meet the next day. Emma would tell her parents that she wanted to have a family meeting about college finances, giving them no indication that she knew about me or their lies. I would arrive during the conversation, and we would confront them together with the truth. As I drove back to my hotel, I felt a strange combination of nervousness and excitement. For the first time since Sarah's initial message, I wasn't facing the Williams family alone. Emma was intelligent, strong-willed, and clearly capable of standing up for herself. Having her as an ally changed everything. But I was also worried about the emotional impact on Emma. Learning that your parents had lied to you about having a sibling, that they had given up a child because of his gender, that they were willing to manipulate that same child for money. It was a lot for anyone to process. I called Patricia Henderson from my hotel room and told her about meeting Emma. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" Patricia asked. I'm angry and hurt and excited all at the same time. Emma seems wonderful, but I feel terrible that she's having to learn all of this. Sometimes the truth hurts before it heals, Patricia said. But lies always hurt more in the long run. You're doing the right thing by giving her the information she needs to make informed decisions about her family. I just hope she's strong enough to handle what's coming tomorrow. From everything you've told me about her, she sounds like she has the strength to handle anything. And, Leo, I'm proud of you for not letting them manipulate you. David and I raised you to know your own worth, and you're proving that you do. After I hung up, I realized that tomorrow would likely be the last time I ever spoke to Sarah and Robert Williams. Whatever happened during that confrontation would determine whether Emma and I could build a relationship as siblings, and whether the Williams family would finally face consequences for their years of deception and manipulation. For the first time since receiving Sarah's message, I felt like I had some control over the situation. Tomorrow, the truth would come out, and the Williams family would have to face the reality of what they had done to both their children. Emma called me at 8 in the morning, her voice tight with nervous energy. I talked to my parents last night. I told them I wanted to have a family meeting today about college finances and future planning. They seemed excited, probably thinking I was going to ask them to take on more debt for Stanford. How are you feeling about this? Terrified and angry and ready to get it over with. Can you be at the house at 2 this afternoon? I spent the morning driving around Columbus, revisiting neighborhoods from my early childhood. The trailer park where I had lived with the Williams family had been demolished, and replaced with a strip mall. The elementary school I had attended for 2 years was now a community center. Everything looked smaller and less intimidating than it had in my 7-year-old memory. At exactly 2 o'clock, I rang the doorbell of the Williams family's suburban home. Through the decorative glass, I could see Emma walking toward the door. She opened it with a forced smile. "Hi, Leo, come on in." The house was beautiful in a way that screamed upper-middle-class comfort. Hardwood floors, granite countertops, family photos covering every surface. Photos of Emma at various ages, but no evidence that another child had ever lived there. It was like walking through a museum dedicated to the daughter who had replaced me. Sarah and Robert were sitting in the living room, looking relaxed and expectant. When they saw me walk in behind Emma, their expressions shifted to confusion and then panic. "Emma, what's going on?" Sarah asked, standing up quickly. "Sit down, Mom. We need to talk." Emma's voice had a steel quality I hadn't heard before. She gestured for me to sit on the couch across from her parents, positioning herself between us like a referee. "I know about Leo." Emma began without preamble. "I know he's my brother. I know you gave him up for adoption because you wanted a daughter. And I know you've been lying to me about our family's financial situation while trying to manipulate him into paying for my Stanford tuition." Sarah's face went white. Robert started to speak, but Emma held up her hand to stop him. "I'm not finished. I also know that we're not struggling financially. I know about Dad's promotion, about the European vacation, about the swimming pool. I know that I have full scholarship offers from multiple universities that would cost you nothing." Robert found his voice. "Emma, you don't understand the whole situation. Then explain it to me. Explain why you told me I was an only child. Explain why you gave up your son because he wasn't the daughter you wanted. Explain why you thought it was acceptable to contact Leo after 12 years of silence to ask for money." Sarah started crying, but these tears seemed more genuine than the manipulative ones from the restaurant. "We were young and scared when Leo was born. We didn't know how to handle having a child, especially a boy. We thought we were doing what was best for everyone. What was best for everyone." Emma's voice was rising. "You gave away my brother because you didn't want a son. Then you replaced him with me and pretended he never existed. How was that best for Leo?" I decided it was time to speak. "Emma, there's something else you should know. Your parents didn't just abandon me and forget about me. They actively erased me from their lives. They told everyone you were their only child. They've been pretending for 18 years that I never existed." I pulled out my phone and showed Emma some of the social media posts Marcus had found. "Look at these captions. Our precious only daughter. The child we always prayed for. Our one and only blessing. They didn't just give me up for adoption. They rewrote history to pretend I was never born." Emma read the posts, her anger growing with each one. "You told everyone I was an only child. You made Leo disappear completely from your family story." Robert tried to defend their actions. "We thought it would be easier for you to grow up without the confusion of knowing about a brother you couldn't see. We wanted you to feel secure in your place in our family." "My place in your family was built on a lie," Emma said. "My entire childhood was based on the false belief that I was your first and only child. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel?" Sarah reached out toward Emma, but Emma pulled away. "Honey, we love you so much. Everything we've done has been to give you the best possible life. Everything you've done has been selfish," Emma shot back. You gave away your son because he wasn't what you wanted. You lied to me about having a brother. You've been lying about our finances. And when you needed money, instead of being honest with me about our situation, or considering less expensive college options, you decided to manipulate Leo. I had been dreading this moment, but it was time to reveal the full extent of their manipulation. Emma, there's one more thing. Your parents have been planning to contact me for months. They joined online support groups for birth parents and consulted with a therapist about how to approach me for money. This wasn't a desperate last resort. It was a calculated plan. The room went completely silent. Even Sarah stopped crying. Emma stared at her parents with an expression of pure disgust. You planned this. You spent months figuring out how to manipulate Leo. We were trying to find the best way to reach out. Robert said weakly. The best way to use him, you mean? Emma stood up and walked to the window looking out at the perfectly manicured yard. I'm not going to Stanford. Emma, no. Sarah jumped up. You can't let our mistakes ruin your dreams. Stanford isn't my dream. It's your dream. My dream is to become a pediatric surgeon, and I can do that just as well from Case Western Reserve University with a full scholarship. Actually, their program is probably better for my goals anyway. Emma turned to face her parents with a look of determination I recognized from my own mirror during difficult moments. I've already accepted Case Western's offer. I called them this morning. My tuition room and board are completely covered. You won't have to pay a penny, and Leo won't have to fund the education of the sister he never knew existed. Sarah collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. We've lost everything. We've lost our daughter's respect. We've lost our son. We've lost our family. You lost your son 18 years ago when you decided he wasn't worth keeping, I said, standing up. You lost Emma's respect when you built her entire childhood on lies. And you lost your family when you decided manipulation was more important than honesty. I walked over to Emma and put my hand on her shoulder. I'm proud of you for making the right choice. Case Western is lucky to have you. What about us? Robert asked desperately. What happens to our family now? Emma looked at her parents with a mixture of sadness and resolve. I don't know. I need time to figure out how to have a relationship with people who have lied to me about everything important. I'll finish high school here, but after graduation, I think I need some distance to sort through all of this. You can stay with me for the summer if you want, I offered. Portland is beautiful, and you could get a job to save money for college expenses. I'd like that, Emma said, smiling at me for the first time since we'd sat down. Sarah made one final desperate attempt. Emma, please don't let our mistakes destroy our relationship. We love you more than anything. If you love me, then prove it by telling me the truth from now on, Emma replied. No more lies about finances. No more lies about our family history. No more manipulation. If you can do that, maybe we can rebuild something honest between us. I left the Williams house that day feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Emma followed me outside and we sat in my rental car for a few minutes, both of us processing what had just happened. I'm sorry you had to learn all of this, I said. I know it's painful. I'm sorry it took me 18 years to find out I had a brother, she replied. But I'm glad I know now. 6 months later, Emma moved to Portland for the summer before starting at Case Western. She got a job at a bookstore similar to the one in Columbus and spent her free time exploring the city with me. We discovered we had similar tastes in music, movies, and food. We both loved hiking and photography. We had the same dry sense of humor and the same stubborn streak that had helped us both stand up to our parents. Emma thrived at Case Western. She joined the Pre-Med Honor Society, volunteered at Cleveland Children's Hospital, and maintained a perfect grade point average. She called me every week with updates about her classes and her research projects. Meanwhile, I started my own freelance graphic design business, partly inspired by the confidence I had gained from standing up to the Williams family. My client base grew steadily, and I was able to move into a one-bedroom apartment in a nicer part of Portland. The Williams family tried to contact both of us several times during that first year. Sarah sent long emails apologizing for their mistakes and begging for forgiveness. Robert called Emma on her birthday, wanting to maintain some kind of relationship. But we both needed time and space to heal from the years of deception. Eventually, Emma decided to have limited contact with our parents, setting strict boundaries about honesty and respect. She required them to acknowledge what they had done wrong and to commit to truthful communication going forward. It was a slow, difficult process, but Emma was determined to see if an honest relationship was possible. I chose not to rebuild any relationship with Sarah and Robert Williams. The damage was too deep, the betrayal too complete. They had contacted me only when they needed money, and they had been willing to emotionally manipulate me to get it. That wasn't the foundation for any relationship I wanted to have. But Emma and I built something beautiful from the ashes of our parents' deception. We became the siblings we should have been all along. She visited me in Portland during college breaks. I drove to Cleveland for her graduation. When she started medical school, I helped her move into her apartment. The story could have ended with bitterness and broken relationships. Instead, it ended with the family connection I had always wanted, just not with the people I had expected. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing their true character, because it allows you to choose better people to call family. Emma Williams became Emma Henderson in every way that mattered. Patricia and David welcomed her as their honorary daughter, and she flourished under their unconditional love and support. We learned that family isn't about biology or obligation. It's about people who choose to love you, support you, and tell you the truth even when it's difficult. The little boy who had been given up for adoption because he wasn't a daughter had finally found his place in the world. Not with the people who had abandoned him, but with the people who recognized his worth and chose to build something genuine with him. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to confront family members about lies or manipulation? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself when people tried to use your emotional connections against you? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming family trauma and finding your true worth. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they deserve honesty and respect in their relationships. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember that you are worthy of genuine love and honest relationships, regardless of what anyone from your past might have told you. Sometimes the family you choose is more valuable than the family you're born into, and that's perfectly okay. Until next time, keep standing up for yourself and choosing the people who truly value you.